Right. Welcome, everyone. Glad you're here. Get started in just a minute. I'm still sharing my screen, right? The green went away. All right. We don't have many other people coming into the waiting room, do we, Brianna? Should we go ahead and get started? Yeah? All right. Well, welcome everyone. Glad you're here at UX and ATX. You're here for the panel discussion on onboarding and nurturing junior designers. My name is Cindy Brummer. I'm one of the organizers for the UX and ATX meetup group, and it's funny, everybody's like, oh, is it just for Austin? And actually, we have so many wonderful friends outside of Austin that it's really just UX everywhere because we are trying to build a community of designers. I want to thank our partner, General Assembly, for helping us on this event, especially with the registration. They've been an amazing partner. We just wrapped up a really awesome summer series with them and Adobe XD. And I will hand it over to our partner, Brianna Chenkin.
Hey y'all, my name is Brianna and I manage events and workshops at General Assembly. Thanks so much for joining. So for those of you who haven't attended an event or workshop that we've been involved with before, a little bit about who we are and what we do. So we are a global tech education company focused on the most in-demand skills, primarily within business, data, design, and technology. And our mission is to empower individuals to do what they love. And we do that in a few different ways. We offer immersive courses for those looking to make career changes. We have part-time courses for those looking to level up. And we have short form workshops and free community events, just similar to this one, almost every day of the week. Currently 100% online, but we typically have in-person offerings as well. We have almost 40 campuses around the globe. There is one in Austin at LC, and I started this. We will mute a few people. But so hopefully, regardless of where we are, hopefully there's a campus near you. And we are starting to roll back community events in person in the next few weeks at some of our campuses. So keep an eye out for what we're doing. And we're excited to roll back in the community as safely as possible. And if you go one more slide. We have a bunch of stuff that's coming up that we're really excited about. I selected a few from the calendar that I thought this group may be interested in. So some free events that we have coming up in October, which starts, October's tomorrow, like where did the time go? We have, in October, we have How to Find a Mentor, a really fun event with Cindy's, with y'all's group, UX and ATX, that's career conversations from bootcamp to success for UX designers. And then we're wrapping up the month with a really fun networking event called Coffee and Connect that we're doing monthly using Gather Round for an interactive, fun virtual networking event. And then we also have a handful of 1-day and 2-day workshops coming up. These are a few you may be interested in. And as a thank you for letting us join tonight, wanted to share a 50% off discount. Use 50 at checkout, and that y'all can get 50% off any of our paid workshops this month.
Okay.
Thank you, Brianna.
Yeah, hang loose for a little bit.
So just a quick reminder, if you're not speaking, to go ahead and mute yourself. I think I've muted like 4 people in the past few minutes. So keep yourself on mute, but we do want this to be interactive. For those of you that want to get involved in the UX and ATX community, please join our Slack group. You can find the link to join Slack on our website at uxandatx.com. We're also on Facebook. I at least announce events on Facebook, so you can find out more there. Please keep up with us there. I'm really excited about our event that's coming up in October. We have a panel of 4 to 5 designers that went through boot camp and then got a job pretty quickly out of boot camp. It can happen. I know that some of our community has been struggling. And so this is a great opportunity to pick their brains about how they did it. So I hope you will be able to join us for that. Also, the UX and ATX subgroup, the UX Job Club, just finished week 2, and we're rolling into week 3 of our 8-week program. It's a pilot. Things are really awesome and exciting so far. I have the pleasure of having about 32 people in that group with me. And once that's done, we're going to assess, see how things are going, and then open up applications for the next cohort sometime in December, maybe January. So be on the lookout on the uxandATX.com website for more information about Job Club if you would like to hone your skills, be with a group of people that are hold you accountable, look at your portfolio, resume, and then coach you through that process. That is what we are doing together. All right, and so it is time to start the conversation tonight. I've brought in 3 very smart people for us to have a conversation, but we really want this to be community-wide. So I encourage you to type comments in chat and ask questions. We'd love to have your comments and questions as we go. Let me introduce who's here tonight. Unfortunately, Napier Kentish has COVID and he is doing okay, but he couldn't join us tonight. But we are joined tonight by Kristen Sinclair, who does strategy and experience. She's the design lead at, is it Avio or Avo? I'm not sure how you pronounce your company's name, Kristen.
Avio.
Avio. Yeah. And then Yunji Jung, who is a senior UX designer for the Home Depot, who's going to be talking about her past experiences. We're not talking about the Home Depot tonight. And Stacy, is it Fatika or Fatika? Fatika? Okay, I got it right the first time. Who just left Hyatt Hotels, where she was the director of global digital design. And so I am super excited to have them here. Of course, myself, I'm creative director at Standard Beagle. We are a UX design and development agency based in Austin. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can have a really good conversation. And so you can see us here. I wanted to kick off with some, just like some questions, first of all, about the job market itself, because I think we're all seeing things happening, and I'm not sure that I'm putting all the pieces together necessarily about what's happening in the job market. I know that when I look out there, I'm seeing a whole lot of UX jobs, but I'm hearing from the junior designers that I mentor that there's not a lot of junior UX jobs out there. So I kind of wanted to open this up to you 3, what your impression is of the job market today for designers. Who wants to start?
I can kick it off.
Yeah.
So a couple months ago when I was at Hyatt, I actually was hiring I had about a dozen recs that were open. And we were hiring all ends of the spectrum, both senior designers and junior designers. And I will say that we had a hard time finding people because there were so many job openings out there that we would make an offer for a designer and someone else would make a better offer. It's a great problem for our industry to have. And I was able to actually hire a junior designer because succession planning is very important in an organization. And I will say that those jobs I felt like there weren't as many, but just as important. And so with that said, I definitely feel like the market is really hot right now. But coming to the table with the skills, whether you learn them at General Assembly or if you have an internship or whatever that is really important in being able to speak to those. So,
yeah. Yunji or Kristen, what do you think?
I agree that job market is really hot right now. At Home Depot, I'm not talking about the company, but recently has been hiring a lot of UX designers from junior level to staff and manager levels. But I think it is true that there are more senior openings than junior openings. Especially, at a smaller companies, I know that, senior designers are definitely more in demand, and they don't have bandwidth to onboard and nurture junior designers, it seems. So I think hiring or open positions for junior designers is more available for larger companies out there.
Are you seeing the same thing, Kristen?
Yeah, I think like for us right now, we're kind of currently hiring and trying to find the right fit of a person that fits kind of what we're doing. And we're super small. We're like 3 or 4 people and use a lot of contractors. So we're in the process of making the switch to more in-house from using a lot of contractor work, which is a difficult switch for any company that usually uses just contractors ad hoc. I think a lot of times what we're seeing is there's an influx of tons of people in the market. And I definitely see the whole, as you go to make an offer, like it could be that your process for how you're vetting people, maybe it takes too long and you just, lose out because there's other offers that are better. But there's purposes and reasons behind why you need a process that takes longer, because you want to make sure it's a good fit for both people and that it's going to be something that's long. We want to make sure that when we hire somebody, we're in it for the long haul and they're there to grow with us. And I think sometimes that's a hard thing to hire for if it's not so specific and niche in terms of a specific thing versus doing different aspects of UX design and strategy versus just being a visual designer only or just being this type of designer. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of the things happening there. And I will say that I fault myself for trying to look for other senior people first, mostly because we're so small. And I need somebody that can kind of understand some of the flow of what we're doing quickly. But at the same time, there's benefits to being able to hire somebody who's fresh that you can help train up and grow. So there's like, it's kind of a catch-22 situation, I would say.
Yeah, and to add on to that, definitely, first off, Kristen, it's awesome that your company sees the value in hiring designers full-time. That is fantastic. And I think we're finally to the point where companies are really seeing that. Again, yes, making sure that there's the right fit, because when your mid-level designers start to be promoted, there's going to be a huge gap there. And you don't want some companies, which I don't agree that this is right, sometimes they'll say, hey, you have to do your old job and your new job until we find the new person. But if you have a few junior designers who are able to step in and might not be able to do all of the things, but a few of them, it helps with that transition of moving that person up the ladder a lot easier. So again, having people who are a little bit more green is a great thing for being able to step in and help when there are promotions.
Yeah, in terms of my company, we're small too. And so when we have an opening, like we did recently for a designer, for us, it was kind of like Kristen, we were looking for a very particular type of designer, but there were so many little levers that we had to, kind of pull, right? Like it is tempting to hire someone that can just jump in right then. I don't have to do a lot of training but then for my company, we're also looking at our budget of, can we afford the senior or the mid-level designer? Because that's a real consideration as well. And so then if, in terms of just the crunch of a junior designer, then we really have to find the right fit, someone who is capable of jumping in really quickly, someone who's capable of learning fast on the job. And sometimes that's just a tough thing to find in a junior designer. And it's unfair. It's honestly unfair for me to ask that of them if that's not where they're at, And so I'm wondering if you guys agree with this, of like the push for mid-level and senior, is it, because I'm kind of seeing a bunch of things happen, right? Is it because companies really, people just don't have bandwidth to train? Or is it that there are so many companies that are starting to hire designers in-house that their teams are at where you have to establish the seniority first before you add the junior level? Or is it, do they just not know the difference in skill level or, you know, what they're looking for?
Yeah,
That's a
I was going to say, Unji, you and I have worked at pretty large companies. So you might have it, not speaking to one or the other, but just that perspective of that larger company and what it looks like. There's a lot more what we'll call leveling and detailed descriptions of those different levels of designers, which maybe a small company might not have. Unji, what do you think?
I think smaller companies definitely seek out for more generalists, right? You know, they often, you know, in the job descriptions that they want someone who does research, design, execution, and everything. And it is really hard to find a junior designer who knows all the process from end to end, or have experience in it. And that's, I think that's one of the contributing factor.
Yeah, it's super interesting because my answer to your question, Cindy, would have been yes, like to everything you said. Because
all the things.
it's all the things. Yes to all the things. Because big company, I've been at mid-level growing to big company, and then was recently, before I started this job, at a company that had over 51,000 employees, like worldwide and growing. And they didn't have really a respect or understanding for design, but just the hiring situation in general was very similar. Just in trying to pull people in and the contract versus full-time. Sometimes I've noticed, and I don't know if this is synonymous with design type departments within larger companies that are like have more of a respect for design, but large companies have a tendency to contract first, then full-time. But usually they're not contracting first. They're contracting first because it's cheaper, it's quicker, and they're not guaranteeing those employees full-time positions. And those employees aren't getting the rights and benefits of being an internal employee. But as the company grows, I find that I see larger companies are doing that more often. I'd be curious to know if like larger companies that have an in-house design department that really respects design, do they do the same thing? But yeah, I think it completely depends. Like it's yes on all fronts. There's issues in all levels, which we could totally break down and get into.
Let's break it down.
One thing that I have been observing around the industry is that there are a lot of companies that make the UX managers not only do, you know, managerial tasks, but also work as a full-time designers themselves. So as an individual contributor, they also need to support the, you know, people management in the company. And you know, when they go out and try to hire people, you know, as hiring managers who are working full-time designers, they just don't have bandwidth to train people, even in larger organizations. So, you know, I think having, it really doesn't depend, it really isn't about the size of the organization that don't consider or set aside resources to train junior designers when they come on board. It's just all across the industry.
Yeah,
regardless of size.
I think making sure that every organization has a clear career path for their design team, so that it's that Y career path. And the one side is the individual contributor and the other side is the people manager. And there are a few people who can do both, but it's very rare. And you really want people to lean into what they feel comfortable and are strong at. Myself, I can do some design. It is something that I have done in the past, but people management is truly the thing I love the most and what I feel like I'm really good at. And so making sure that you have a junior designer who can come in, start to figure out what is their passion. Do they want to go into that craft and really learn about research or design or whatever it is? Or do they want to go into people management? Knowing that they won't figure that out right away, but having that outlined when someone comes into a company is really helpful, and it will actually increase the chances of them staying with the company because they'll have a better understanding of where they lay in the land and what their trajectory
Mhm.
would be.
That actually kind
Yep.
of dovetails into what Adrienne asked. She asked, does the fact that people leave after 2 years to change jobs, in tech at least, make any difference in hiring outlook for junior designers? What do y'all think?
I think 2 years is I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's when you get into you're starting to see the 6 month, 9 month, 1 year path of constant hopping. To me, that says that there's one of two things that could be possible. One, just haven't found your fit yet, where you know that you want to be and you want to learn and grow. Or two, they're thinking that they want to do something a certain way and it's just not working. Like it's like oil and water with every company that they're at. But I also think like 2 years is a good stint. When I see 2 years on a resume, that's fine to me. There's no issue. And it's also about what and how you did within that, or what you did, how you did it within the time frame you were at. So I think for me, like recently, I was only at a company for 1 year and 2 months before I moved to another position, which I have never done in my life. Usually I've been at a company for 5 years, for 6 years. So like that's been my usual trajectory. But I went into that job going, this is a transition role. I'm going to school. I want to try and find whatever my next step is. And when I found it, I moved. But I also felt bad because I was like, I've only been here 1 year and 2 months. Should I stay? And I think that was just the corporate culture saying, you need to just accept your situation and just live with it. But no, I took a chance and I jumped during COVID. And I am where I am today. And I couldn't be happier for this current trajectory. So, yeah, I don't think it's bad to jump after 2 years.
I like it when people stay. I'm just going to say it right there.
No,
as a small company, and I get it, people need to move on. Like it was really hard when we had our designer leave. She hadn't been with us more than 2 years, and she had grown so much in that time that she really moved into a mid-level, even senior position. So in that 2 years, she went from junior all the way to a mid-level. So you can do a lot in 2 years. Like I would expect that unless you're like starting in a completely brand new area, that you're probably going to gain a lot just in 2 years of employment.
Mm-hmm.
I like what Stacy said about having a clear career trajectory. That's been told me by other people outside of the industry as well, because that's how you keep people staying. And that's how you grow someone. And I'm still learning how to mentor and manage. And I'm really excited about the team that I have now. And I look at them and I think, oh, please don't leave. Please don't leave. I'm teaching you so much. Please don't leave. Because, you invest a lot in someone. So it kind of goes both ways, right? Like you want to make sure it's a good fit. You want to make sure that it's right for everybody. And then on the employee side, as a designer, you want to grow and improve your skills and have someone that mentors you. At least I'm assuming. That's what I hear a lot from people. And then as an employer, I want someone, sorry about my dog. So I want someone that's going to stay, that I can invest in. And then you get a good working groove in. It's hard when people are constantly turning over. That's just my perspective on it.
I think it's a good perspective though, because I would also say though, that's kudos to you growing a designer and helping them mentor and grow in those 2 years. I had a mentor once that told me, like, my goal is always to help grow a designer as much as they can within the tools that I have so they get stolen. The goal is to make sure that somebody has to come after you, and they have to come after you hard, because we're doing everything we can to grow and keep you here. But the reason you leave is because there's something way better, not because where you are is bad. It's because it's something like to the next level of where you have to grow. But I think that's, you know, that's great that she was able to grow and excel in that time frame from, you know, junior to senior.
Yeah, I have told quite a few employees to almost that exact same point that I want them to be successful. I want them to grow. I want them to learn. And I want them to be so good at their job that they could leave at any time, but they decide to stay. And that's the important part, is they decide to stay. I've had a few employees who they could have made more money, but I don't care when someone works. My thing is you get your job done. I don't care when you're in front of the computer. And I've had some young women who are moms and they needed that flexibility in their life. So learning about who your colleagues are and like what motivates them, that's really strong sense of what drives them is what's going to figure out how can we make this partnership work for both of us. And sometimes it'll surprise you. It's not always money. It's not always the free lunches. Everybody likes a free meal, but that doesn't make someone stay at a company. And now it seems a lot of people they want to live from anywhere. So they don't want to be in an office. What are the motivations for someone to stay at a company? And I'm sure, all the people on here, they have those things that are true to them. And those are their pillars of what is important to them. But for you to have that comfort in your manager to open up and tell them that takes a little bit of time and trust. So,
Yeah, I think it all goes back to the theme of culture, people, nurturing the culture, having a good team and not a good tools, right? It's not about ping pong tables or coolest office in town. It's about having the right people and knowing and being the right fit. I think that's what that's the strongest thing that keeps people where they are these days.
So there's a question in the chat about could we quantify a good fit for everyone, maybe 2 to 3 examples of what a junior designer would bring as a good fit?
Well, I have my opinions. One, I'm going to say it depends on every company, right? Every company has different needs. But in general, if I kind of look at like the characteristics around a good junior, this is someone who's excited and hungry. They just exude, I love UX design. I love it. You can just feel it. They just have so much energy. Even if they're introverted, you can still feel that excitement from them. So that's one thing that just displays someone who is going to figure it out no matter what, because they're so excited about it. I try to weed out the people that I can see that if they run up against some sort of obstacle, that they're going to stop. And I'm looking for someone that's going to be a figure it outer. They're going to learn as much as they can on their own. So, that's one of our core values, dogged curiosity. That's exactly what that means in my world. And if in my personal situation, I'm looking for a more generalist because we're small, we're scrappy, we have a lot of different things that are coming through since we're an agency. So I don't have the luxury of having people specialize in just as a UX researcher or as a visual designer. I don't have that. I need somebody who is a generalist that maybe has an interest in an area, but they have done or they can do it all. And that's what I'm kind of looking for in the characteristics. Someone else.
I think your description of curiosity and having that energy often comes to me as confidence when interviewing for junior designers. Even though they are juniors and they know that they don't know everything, sometimes I meet these junior designers at an interview that are very confident in their words, and that just speaks to me. I think I have more faith in trusting them, that they will figure it out, and they know what they want, and they know, they have given a thought why they want to do UX and why they want to join the company. I think we're speaking the same things, but sometimes to me that come across as a confidence.
Yeah, I think I agree with like both of those sentiments. I think for me too, personally, I'm looking for more of a generalist for what we're looking for right now in the UX field. But, from that perspective, I think I'm really looking for, again, somebody who is passionate, who has that curiosity. And I would also add the word inquisitive, in terms of like just being able to ask questions that are really good questions and being not afraid to ask those questions. I think there's been some interviews I've gone through with different designers where they have the confidence, but it's pseudo confidence, where they're overconfident about things they actually don't know if they're passionate about. They're just saying what you want to hear. So they may interview well and they go through the process. And this is part of why I think sometimes our process, while be it long, it shakes out some of those things that you would discover in the first few days when you're kind of going through the process. And I think that's also why you have these different sessions that you do where you're kind of doing a whiteboard sketch session and things to kind of, how does that person think? I want to see how you think. I want to know you're passionate about the subject. I want to know you've looked into it. And if you can kind of talk about those things like you would just any hobby or something that you really love, then you're going to get more attention from me and you're going to get more curiosity on, okay, well, what do you want to do? And like, what's your thoughts on working here and trying to figure out those next steps? And I think anyone, no matter the level, could have those qualities, no matter your skill set of portfolio or other things. So.
And just a nuance, there is a difference between confidence and being cocky. So cocky is not what we want, but having confidence in yourself and what you say is important. Going back to that being inquisitive, I think a great example that I've seen in the past of, I was interviewing a junior designer and they went on to the company that I was with, their app and their website, and they actually told me like what worked well for them and what didn't. And that was great because number one, it said that they were interested in the company, they were doing research on the company, and then it also gave me a little bit of insight into their empathy and their understanding of design when it came to going through a flow and what that meant to them. That is like fireworks when you get a designer who does that in an interview. So
I like that too, because that shows a lot of building of rapport and trust, because that sets the stage for that onboarding and nurturing once they're actually, brought into the company. Because, in terms of like, and I was going to ask this of you guys of what you think is good for onboarding. And in my opinion, onboarding isn't just me holding someone's hand. I definitely need to help them and show them what we do. But I also need that person to trust me enough to ask the questions, because I may not know what questions they need answered. And I need them to be able to step up and raise the hand of like, I need help, that sort of thing in terms of like that onboarding process. Because when we do it, I have a plan, and I do usually do an internal project to help them get acquainted with the tools and things like that. But if they're doing great, like literally our designer that started, like in a week, I was like, you're ready for client work. And I'm like throwing her client work and she's just like, but I'm like, you got it. You've got this. You can totally do this. And she's like, I have questions. Okay, great. I'll jump on a call with you. Let's go through this. You're doing great. And that onboarding probably seemed a little rough and through to the wolves, but because she can handle it, she may not think she can handle it, but I know she can, just based on the honesty that we have. It's working out really well. What are your thoughts on like good ways to onboard a junior designer into the mix?
I mean, I love this part. This was an exercise I actually did earlier in the year. I actually got the entire design team together and said, hey, when you were onboarded, what worked for you and what didn't work for you? And we actually had an open dialogue about it. And then we listed out all these items. And we had a huge list of things of both what worked and what didn't work. And then we, from there, created a 30, 60, and 90-day plan of all the things. And it was in a Confluence page, so everybody could see it, everybody could edit it, and it was shareable both in design and outside of design. And then on top of that, every week, this was a larger company, the new hire would have a onboarding buddy. And because you're switching out people each week, you don't know what the new person asked the week before. So if they didn't get something the first time, they could ask that question again to their new onboarding buddy and not feel any sort of hesitancy because maybe they didn't know the answer to something they felt like they should have.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think Stacy brought up a good point that I completely agree that I think a huge portion of onboarding process, not just for junior designers, but also for mid and senior level designers or anyone, honestly, is to set the stage for them to grow and build strong relationships in the organizations. Because, you know, to set the ground, hit the ground running, they need to have the context. They can't just read some blob of about the project and just execute it, right? They need to know what the context is, what the background is, and all those information doesn't come from single source. It requires the entire team or the company to onboard and nurture this new person. And for junior designers, having a mentor that they can, keep going back to, that's a great company that I would want to work there.
I love that. I love that. And it's funny too, because like I took the designer to every meeting that week. And she was like, why am I here? And I'm like, because you need to know what the conversation is with this client.
Yep.
And so and honestly, when I look at my calendar, Google now has a thing where they'll analyze how much time you spend in meetings. Don't look at it. Mine says 35 hours. So she spent a lot of time in meetings that week, but she was able to see like, oh, this is what's going on. And it gives like, because we don't have Confluence as built out as, I want to see your Confluence page, Stacey. If you have like any notes or draft, I want to see what that onboarding plan looks like. Kristen, what about you guys? How do you guys onboard, especially as you're building out processes, I imagine like we are?
So it's funny you say that, like, so currently I'm excited because we get to like kind of do, like I'm able to be a part of having the ability to do it from scratch and figure out how do we want to do it right. Similar to kind of what Stacy was saying, I do think it's really important to have like that level of trust. It's a two-way street. And I think the fact that you were able to sit everybody down and kind of just openly talk about it, that really like gave you like a ground to work with, that you can build like a structure that's going to last, regardless of whether you stay there or you go or designers leave or don't leave. Like, it doesn't matter. It's kind of it's a structure built on the foundation of people. And I think those are always stronger. The other thing I think that's important too is to what Eugene, did I say that right? Eugene?
Unji.
Okay. Apologies. I think what you were saying was really pertinent to the fact that at any company beyond design, there's institutional knowledge, right? There's knowledge of how do people work with each other? How do they interact? How do you communicate with different teams? What kind of products are you selling? Like, if it's like a CE company versus a software company versus all sorts of different other things, I think there's all of that knowledge that has to be absorbed as well, that you have to understand in addition to applying your design skill sets. It's the 30, 60, 90 is very like standard. I think the good thing to do if you're in a company that doesn't let you, because the previous company I have been in, some of the previous companies I've been in, I haven't had control of how I want to set up the onboarding process. That was out of my hands. I would do my own miniature onboarding process from a design perspective, but for all of the other touch points, that was out of my hands. I think understanding how the other processes that your employee goes through and being there as a sounding board when something may not go right or helping to point them into the right direction is always helpful to make sure you're nurturing them properly. Onboarding processes are hard. I think it's just right now we're leaning towards, and I know I'm rambling a little, we're leaning towards more trying to do more video. Like we'll have documentation, we're going to be building an intranet, but we're also going to be doing a lot of videos that are me, myself, our president, and our other strategy lead kind of talking through different things. So it's holistic in terms of all of us are a part of it. It's not one person talking as the company, it's each of us. And as we grow, I would expect that other employees would be a part of that as well, to show kind of the holistic nature of the company as we grow.
I think that's a challenge too, though, because, when you've been in a company, when you've been working there for a while, you tend to forget the things that you learned at the very beginning that are so important to pass on to somebody else. I mean, my company's been around since 2012, and there's so much that I've learned along the way, and I forget how much I've just picked up. It's almost like that automatic knowledge that you don't even think about anymore of, oh, yeah, that's right. They don't know why we do things the way we do it, or why we use these tools, or which tool to choose at this different time. And what I've been trying to make sure that I do is sit down with someone else and have them like interview me, so that we can write down all those things that I forget. Because I'll be like, oh, wait, what was that? And I'll be like, oh, that's right. I didn't tell you that because I forgot that I know it. That's the problem with institutional knowledge, is because you forget that you are so full of it. That and other things. But it's so tough. It's so tough from the senior position to remember what it's like to be a junior too, of like what it's like to not know all the things. So.
And I think, I saw somebody mentioned, do you know if there's any career therapists? I love that. I think that's kind of a little bit of the panel discussion of what we're doing here today too. I think the biggest thing and piece of like advice I can say is practice interviewing, practice with different people, practice asking those questions, get to the point where you feel confident, because I think that, and get to the point where you can kind of create what your story is that you want to share with people. And I think that's one of the hardest parts that we all forget to practice sometimes. Like we may practice it in like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to go through this process. But the more you just try and keep doing it and keep talking to people, the easier it will get. And you can, be able to go into the different interviews with more confidence for different things.
So James wrote something that I wanted to ask you guys. When it comes to juniors asking questions, when is it too much? Vulnerable in ignorance, or when too much? James, feel free to come off mute if you want to clarify, but what I think you're asking is, when is it too much? when are too many questions too much? Or is there such a thing? Kristen's like, I've answered enough.
No, I think like it depends on the questions, right? And how the conversation's going. It's a hard thing to say like, well, 25 questions is too much, you're done, get out the door. But if those 25 questions, right, are in the conversation that's very engaging, it doesn't matter the amount of questions you're having, because at that point, it's not about questions, you're creating a conversation and building a relationship. So it's all about, do the questions have purpose behind them, or are they surface questions that are easily Googleable? Like if I'm just like, if somebody comes to me and says, oh, well, what do you do for stock photography and how do you take care of blah, blah, blah. Like if they're very like surface level questions that the answer is easily found, those are not questions you should be asking. They should be deeper questions to really dig in based on what you're hearing. Just like all of the things that people are learning in the different classes and what you would learn at General Assembly or any other UX classes, like really dig to understand your stakeholder, which would be the person that is interviewing you, and kind of understand what they're actually trying to ask you, so that when you ask questions, it's not just like, oh, you know, it's not just like kind of tiptoeing around to finish the conversation. Does that make sense? Sure, I'm like talking in circles today.
I think so.
I'm gonna add to what you just said, Kristen. It is extremely important for junior designers to set up some time with, other senior designers or, someone around you, to really get to know them. Don't we all can see when people are trying to use us, right? And we're not going to like it too much if it happens over and over and over again. But it's about building the relationship, building having the conversation about who you are, what you want to know, what you need from me and the organization. Of course, people are more willing to help you out. At the end of the day, you're a team member and we want you to feel like a team. It's, I think having that mindset of, hey, I'm a part of this team and I need to know this team to really like contribute. I think that's really important.
What about you, Stacy?
I agree with everything that has been said here. I will say that on a little bit of a side note, I know that someone in the chat had also asked about hard and soft skills. I think going into the questions, that is part of the soft skills, being able to ask questions in a way that makes sense, that is, curious, and also are able to articulate exactly what it is you're trying to figure out. The exact question was, what are the hard and soft skills that someone in the field should have? I am going to say that the one thing that I have noticed from junior designers that they lack is being able to present and sell their ideas. And that's okay because they haven't had the practice yet, but it's something that they should be aware of and it's something they should be working on. Presenting is something that takes a lot of time. And whether it's joining a Toastmasters club or finding some friends or colleagues that you trust and feel comfortable with and practicing, it's something that more junior or greener designers tend to not have those skills. And again, that makes sense, but it's something to work on. And if you can get a little bit ahead in that area, you're going to stand out from other people.
I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to talk about the questions. I love questions. I will say that if you're concerned that you're bothering someone, then you probably just want to take a look at, like, am I peppering my questions out so that I'm interrupting their flow, or am I maximizing my time with that person? Because I tend to be the person that will stop what I'm doing. When we were in the office, people would just come into my office and just ask questions and then leave. And then, of course, I want to make sure that I'm answering whatever questions they have. And so I would stop my work, and I found myself getting more and more frustrated as time went on, because not with them, but with the fact that I couldn't get my work done. And so I think it's important as a junior designer just to recognize that, and it goes back to what we said at the very beginning, bandwidth is tight and we want to help. So we need to optimize our time with juniors and help them, but not in a way that's going to be a detriment to our own work. So I think scheduling the time, making sure that you come in prepared, that you're, that you've done your Google foo, I like to say, ahead of time, before, just peppering with tons and tons of questions. I love questions. So that 30-minute meeting that people schedule with me is great. It's on my calendar. It's so much better than the policy I had where people could just walk in. So use that. So don't just call people or text them randomly and expect them to not get frustrated throughout the day because you've basically taken their entire day with questions. That would be what I say.
No, that's a good point. I think one thing on the flip side of questions is when you're being asked questions, it's sometimes okay to say, I actually don't know that, and I need to do more research to figure out exactly how to answer. And just being openly honest about what you do know and what you don't know, that's okay. Don't try and force an answer down thinking you might know what they're talking about and what they're asking for, because it's just going to come off not right, for lack of a better term. I think like detail orientedness and paying attention to the conversation is highly important. And I definitely, I saw in the chat too, like what are some of the, what is it? I don't remember where it was. But basically, I think I really look for people that are detail oriented. So if your presentation is missing periods, or you didn't like get something right in the presentation, or you're not asking questions of substance, I'm paying attention to that. Or if we've gone through the whole interview and I say, so do you have any questions for me? And you have nothing, that's also a sign for me that this isn't going to work. So those are the kinds of things that I look for, because it's a relationship. You want to have that conversation. It's got to go back and forth.
Oh, go ahead. I'll let you go
I was
first.
just gonna say, I agree. I think the best interviews are at the end when I ask if someone has questions and they flip open their notebook and they have a whole bunch of stuff written down. I'm like, oh yeah, bring it. This is great. Because again, it shows that they're curious. They want to know. I mean, you spend so much of your life at work that, again, you want to make sure both parties are happy with what this relationship is going to be. So there should be a lot of questions.
I love that too. And it's a red flag when they ask me one thing and it was on my website. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
that was on the website and you obviously just put this together at the last minute. But it, kind of circling back for those people that are already hired as a junior, I love junior designers because they come with a beginner's mindset. And that doesn't mean that they're like completely like novices when it comes to the material, but the beginner's mindset means like, I'm open, I'm a sponge, I'm ready to learn. I love that. That's why I love hiring junior designers, because I have this whole thing that I kind of look at in terms of like level, right? Like you have your junior levels that have the beginner's mindset. They're very successful because of it. And you have, usually I see this in developers, the mid-levels, they have some knowledge. So that's when the danger zone comes with the cockiness that we don't really like. Because I know it. I know it. I don't need you to tell me, So that's kind of danger zone for me. And then at senior level, these are the folks that have so much knowledge that they know that they don't know it all. So they've returned to the beginner's mindset and they're open to it, but they have some gravitas and wisdom behind it. So it kind of goes full circle. So that's what I love about nurturing a junior designer, is hopefully helping them skip the cockiness stage and getting straight to the senior level. So I don't know if you all have seen the same thing happen.
I completely agree with Cindy, what you just said. And going back to what Kristen mentioned about, it's okay to say that you don't know the answer right off the bat. And it is a great strategy that I use all the time, because even if you are a senior designer, you don't have all the answers in the world, right? And it is like I use it all the time, that I just say that I don't know. I will go back, do some research, and I'll get back to you. And what's wrong with that? There's no one that's going to hunt you down for it. I don't want to cut off anyone. And I want to point out that Tanya has a question and she asked to unmute.
Yes, please.
Hi. I did have a question. So I'm a beginner UX designer, I suppose. I am taking a course in UX design, and I think what I kind of struggle with understanding is the whole concept of UX design as a whole. It seems like it's a mix of business pitching, kind of wanting to market, sort of having an interesting way to design, I don't know, an app or a website, and having that interesting visual perspective. And I think coupled with having like a business side of, oh, here's what I invented, kind of deal. Like, is that what, do you feel like maybe that's what UX is on? Because I'm maybe, because I'm so new to this, and I'm looking at it also in a way to compare it with graphic design, and how graphic designers have to learn Adobe, Photoshop. And it just seems like, because I'm such a beginner in the UX design field, I don't know exactly what UX design means or is.
Yeah, I mean, Tanya, I was going to say, I've been in the industry for 20 years, and it's a great question because, UX design, first off, it didn't really exist 20 years ago when I started my career, like some of the other people here. But also, I think the best way to, and let me know if someone disagrees, the best way to frame UX design really has 3 tiers. So feasibility, does it work? Can engineering, get it to work in a way that users can use it? Viability, is there a business need for it? And then usability, and I'm going to say usability is the most important, although others will disagree, because if someone can't use it, then it, and that's where the design comes in, and the empathy and the user research. There's a lot of different facets to design and UX design. I wish I could give you a really simple answer, but the industry is evolving, and next year it could be a different landscape. It's exciting, and it's also a good bit of work because we got to stay up to date on what's happening. So Cindy, Unji, Kristen, you want to add or correct anything?
I think you're definitely like spot on with a lot of that. And I came from the graphic design space and moved into the UX design space because I was seeing like a lot of things I was doing was very similar to industrial design, packaging design, layout, web design. I was doing kind of all different parts and pieces with one of my jobs that I had. And I was like, I'm going to dive into this and kind of figure out what it is and what it means. And one of the biggest things I think, and I mean, I think a lot of design professions have this, but I think patience is like something you have to really learn to have with every aspect of anything you touch in UX design. So whether you are on the research, visual, dealing with stakeholders, trying to define the business need, you have to have patience. If you find yourself not having patience, then it might not be something that feels right for you. I think also, Tiana, I think what I find very interesting is part of the problem with UX design right now in terms of its what people see and what it actually is when defining what that career path is like are not tied well together. Like the explanation of understanding what does this actually mean so that when people get into it, they can kind of understand it as they dive in isn't as clear. It's a little muddy. And then once you get in and you start understanding and the pieces start to clear out. But yeah, I think it all starts around the user and understanding what their needs are and then applying all of those needs through the lens of the different people and audiences you're talking to so that you can try and solve the different problems that are there.
You're so articulate.
That did not feel, by the way, that's funny you say that because in my head, as I was saying that, I was like, this sounds like a hot mess. Does not sound right at all.
That was beautiful, both of you guys.
Thank you.
I mean, I remember like 20 years ago, I remember telling someone, maybe it wasn't 20 years ago, but it was a long time ago. I said, I'm an experienced designer. And they're like, you're a what? It did not exist then. But the whole concept of it really resonated with me because I made a switch from a career in journalism. And for me, telling the story as the crusader for the little person, for the person, and putting together stories that people could read, watch, whatever it is that resonated with them, that was connecting to them. That's why UX made such an impression on me. That's why when, I made the switch, I like beat the drum for, hey, the stuff that people see on the screen or read or whatever it is, it needs to be about them, not about search engine algorithms. People thought I was nuts. So, when we started using this term UX, and I was like, oh, that's what I do. It was so exciting for me because for me, it's always been about that person. And just having like a name for it that I could say, yes, I put myself in the user's shoes so that I can make sure that they have the best experience. And yes, it does tie in with the business. Yes, it has to work with engineering. That's why it feels so big, because it is a big job. And then so as you kind of go in, when you get that kind of, oh, this is what I love, then you've found it. That's your aha moment, So that's what I would say.
I think we're talking about, finding your passion into a specific like area of UX, right? Y'all can, if you don't know what the UX designers do, then you can do some research. And there are tons of materials out there. But what I love about UX is that everyone uses different terminology when they're talking about the same thing. We talk about product designers, UX designers, UI designers, UX architects, information architect, everything. Essentially, like, they can talk about the same role. And I think it really depends on the organization structure, what's available for you to utilize. If you enter a team of a UX researcher, UI designer, and if you enter the team as UX designer into that group, then your role will be significantly different in a team with one product designer, right? So it really, like, I think there is no hard definition of what a job title signifies. And at the end of the day, there are so many companies out there that are hiring, and honestly, like, UX is so hot. You down the road, I think it is a blessing that you can find a team that can support the specific functionality of UX that you really want to practice. And you can really design your experience as a UX designer. You can really design your career path to really do and focus on the things that you love about UX. If you want to stay as a generalist, then you can find companies that can support you in that way. And if you want to specialize in UX research or anything else, then you can find another organization that can support that. Yeah.
So I see I was just gonna say, I see a lot of great questions in the chat as they're popping up. And Unji, one of this is, what's the difference between UX design and a product designer? And I think that's a great question. Again, it depends on your organization, but I have my answer. Does someone else want to?
No, I wanted to hear yours.
So I see a UX designer, and Unji, let me know, because this very much so is your profession, is that you are specific in, and again, it depends on the company, what the user experience is. I feel like when a company uses product designer, sometimes they're looking for more of a full stack designer, and that is UX, UI, research. There's a plethora of other things they can clump in there too. Whereas a UX designer is very specific. A product designer is more of, you're doing a little bit of everything.
I would agree.
Interesting. I actually think it's the flip.
Yeah, I thought it was the flip too.
Really?
So yeah,
Because
that's why I wanted to know.
Yeah. So in Denver, I used to live in Denver. I was there for 2 years. 1 year was COVID. So felt like I was there for 1 year. Well, still COVID. I don't know what I'm talking about. We're still here. Let's not convince ourselves it's not. So anyways, everybody is a product designer. If you're in UX, it's pretty much product design, product design, product design. The full stack term that Stacy used is a popular up and coming term that I'm constantly hearing, which is synonymous with somebody who's also a full stack developer. So like they're starting to try and use that too. But what you guys were saying earlier in terms of just like looking for how you can mold yourself to whatever position you want, what you should pay attention to is what do they describe the role? Excuse my French, fuck the title, because each company is going to be completely different. What matters is what are they asking you to do? Because a lot of UX positions tend to be the generalists that I see across the country. And then it depends on area where you live. So Denver's the up and coming tech area that's starting to pull in people from California, from New York, just all come to Denver, and everything's kind of becoming the new tech center, so to speak. And I think there's a lot of that product design, but there's also a lot of startup products that are very specific. So the way I think of product design is it's specific, but specific to the product. So you might be doing multiple things around what that product may need, but then UX design is when, at least in my experience of what I've seen in the different roles, is where you have somebody who's generally doing research, doing visual design, doing information architect. They're touching each part of UX as a whole for a company, because that company doesn't have enough money to actually spend on a team to be specific people. I could be completely wrong, because it could be just, I think there needs to be a research project on this, because I think it's completely dependent on location and where you are. Because in Europe, whole different story. So it's, and if you think about physical product versus digital product, that turns into a whole can of worms as well. So like if you're designing a UX experience for an industrial design product, it's still UX design, but the way that they think of it is different than what a product designer thinks of it.
So how would you describe it?
I would agree with Stacy's definition more, that UX focuses more on the user side of things, excluding or less of UI or visual elements. And product designer touches more on the whole spectrum of things, including visual design. And I think that is why it's extremely important for you to, really nail down what you have done under a role title in your resume, because everyone has different ideas about what product designer means, or what UX designer do. Yeah, I think that's funny that we're
all debating this.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It just goes to show that we're still evolving, right? I mean, it goes back to what Stacey said. It's growing and evolving as we speak.
Right.
Gwen, you have a question.
Well, I just wanted to weigh in on this same subject, because I'm a recovering architect of the bricks and mortar type, and I always feel bad and cringe a little bit when I hear all, UX architect, information architect, and so on, because it's like where I grew up, you could get sued for calling yourself an architect if you don't have a license. So,
Oh, that's interesting.
but the thing is that, you know, I know a lot of industrial designers, and some number of years ago, they started being called product designers as opposed to industrial designers. And so
Right.
I think it's very confusing when UX designers are also called product designers, because although I worked doing UX in an industrial design office and working with all these other industrial designers and so on,
Yeah.
they really think of themselves much more as product designers because they do a wide variety of things that's, you know, entailing graphics and entailing some UX sometimes, as well as the physical product itself.
Yeah, Gwen, I agree with you. I think that as the industry evolves, this is my prediction. I wouldn't bet money on this, but I think that we're going to start to see the industry start to realize that there are UX designers, there are UI designers, there are UX researchers, and then there are full stack designers, because the term product design is outdated and it is still used by some companies. I'm not going to name names, but typically ones that are behind the curve. And I will say that companies that tend to be a little bit more progressive are really figuring out that we want to make sure we get the right fit and we hire someone who specifically knows what user experience design is. And they see that value. Again, that's a generalization, but I think we're going to start to go that way. Because again, product design, when I went to college, it was physical products.
Right.
So
That's why I, you know, really have hesitated using that for myself for a long time. And I think I only added it to my LinkedIn profile just because, you know, people were like assuming that I couldn't do it. And that's what really frustrated me, is that I can do all that. Why do you think a UX designer can't do that? Because to me, UX encompasses all of the things, because it's the entire experience all the way from research. But I like what you said, Stacy, about it would make it much more clear if we had something that was a little bit more standard in how we talked about it, because like literally I get this question all the time from people, like, what does it mean? And I don't have the same answer as you guys. I'll probably change it after having this conversation tonight, you know, but you know.
Unji and I actually worked at the same company for a moment where we had a UX team and a UI team, and we had a UX research team. It was awesome to have those divided. I will say that they did have overlap, and they did have some full stack designers as well, which was something that was new for the company. But again, the whole industry is changing. So
I really like how you described it, Stacy. I think the problem I sometimes have is, this is the problem with currently with when people are starting to use the term design thinking for everything, where I think the terms in different ways that we describe things get picked up and a fire gets lit under them. And then everybody just starts using them thinking that they know what they mean. And I think that's right now, that's how I'm seeing the full stack situation happening, where it's turning into a way to say, you need to know how to do everything without saying, like, it's not very specific, or people are not using it the way that you should be using it. And I think that's happening with a lot of the terminology, because it's not cut and dry, it's blended. And I think it'll be very interesting to see kind of where things go for different things. Because like when I worked a lot with industrial designers side by side, and I was a brand designer, which at the time I hadn't heard of that. I was a graphic designer, and I was like, what is this brand design thing? But that's what the thing was called in the CE industry, was if you are in graphic design or have a department that has all the different pieces that touch brand, then you are a brand designer. So you own a brand design team, and that brand design team is encompassed of this, and they work side by side with the industrial design team developing the product. So, but most likely a lot of what we were doing was a lot of UX as it pairs to physical products. So it's very interesting how things are just kind of like, ooh.
I think it goes back to Kristen saying, read what the job description is, because Angela
Yeah.
asked this question again. Like Angela's trying to make sense of what we're saying, and we're not giving her an exact answer. So she's asking it again. You have to look at the job description because each company is different. How
Yep.
they structure teams is different. It's really hard to define something when the industry itself is not able to define it right now. So
Right.
Totally. Like it's all over the
Completely
place.
true.
Yeah. My job description is completely different. We have a question. I don't know. Is it YKS? I don't know.
Hi, yeah, sorry. Hi guys. I wanted to ask, I don't know if you covered portfolios before in the conversation, but I recently graduated from the GA part-time UX design course, and I'm trying to transition into UX design. And putting my portfolio together, I was kind of wondering, like, what kind of processes or things do, hiring managers and, kind of senior designers want to see from someone like me who, doesn't have that background and really wants to, get into the field.
I definitely have my opinion, but if you guys want to start.
I want to hear your opinion, Cindy.
So when it comes to portfolios, I have some general, they're not rules, but just guidelines to follow in terms of putting it together. One, be proud of your work. Make sure that the work that you put on there, you're going to have to present it likely in an interview. So don't talk it down. Just be proud of it. There's so many different opinions on how to structure a case study. Some people will tell you, don't make it too long, don't make it too short. I usually tell people in a case study, you want to have somewhat of a summary at the top. It's like problem, solution, impact, and those things. And then if I want to dig deeper, then go into the details of the process, maybe underneath or however you want to structure it. Sarah Duty has this article I send everybody to. If you do a search on it, like envision Sarah Duty, it's the first one that pops up. I think I'm raising their SEO on that blog. It's a great article on how to write a case study. In terms of the rest of it, show your personality. Don't make it the same white minimalist portfolio that every other person has. And the reason I say this is because you're forgettable. And you don't want to be forgettable in your portfolio. So Google designers will put up, like on the Google UX course, they share them and they all look the same. I don't know what any of them look like because I can't remember any of them. But I do remember, I believe her name was Charlotte, and she had a green, beautiful background on her portfolio. And I will never forget her portfolio because she put personality into it. So put some personality into it. And then also I would say, show me your critical thinking skills. This is the thing that I see the biggest problem in junior design portfolios is that they create a case study. And it's really more of a checklist. First I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this, and then I did, and I'm like, okay, why? Because as a designer, you have a toolbox of lots of different things. Kind of like a plumber has a toolbox. But a plumber doesn't take a sledgehammer to a leaky sink. They have a choice of the tools they're going to use. So as a designer, I want to know why you chose the tools that you did. And it can't just be because your boss told you or because the class told you to do it. And sometimes things happen. In fact, I would say every project, something happens. Kristen has the project from our graduate program that took all sorts of twists and turns as she went. And she can talk about each one of those, and that critical thinking, I think, really needs to come through in a portfolio.
It's good that you said that too, because like I think the other thing that's good is you want to practice with your portfolio. Even if, like, let's say you design it and it looks amazing, it has your personality. But if you're asked to present it and you don't remember exactly how to flow through that smoothly, that's going to take some of the air out of the conversation, and you have to kind of then fill the gap. So it's good to also practice flowing through the different projects you want to share, or if somebody picks one up, do you know how to get to the different pieces to tell the story? And does the site tell the story itself on its own?
Yeah, I want to add to that. that you're essentially designing your portfolio as well. So be mindful of what type of role that you're trying to apply to, and what type of, skill set that you want to highlight to the employers is portrayed on your portfolio. If you are saying that you have taken accessibility courses, but if your portfolio site is not accessible, then obviously it's not going to cut it, right? If your strength is in visual design, then try to emphasize it in your portfolio. It all ties back to show who you are, but at the same time, your portfolio is also your product, and be mindful of the audience who are reviewing your portfolio.
One other note I'll add to that, which you brought up, which I thought was really good, and I don't think anybody's gonna like this, but I don't like it either. You have got to tailor. It's a lot of work, but you have to tailor your packet of things you deliver and apply for to each company you apply for. You cannot send generic stuff in without actually understanding who you're applying to, why you're applying. Because there's been times where I've had designers and they've applied, yet all of their portfolio is like one design project and illustration. And I'm like, this is not like what I'm looking for. So make sure that you know your audience, to what you were saying, like this, that you're communicating what you have in your portfolio communicates what they're looking for. It's a lot of work, but it definitely pays off over time.
Well, and it's easy to mess up and like take that template and forget to change something. I got a cover letter once that was addressed to Bernie. I don't think I called them.
Looking for a job is a full-time job, for sure. I mean, between updating your resume for each and individual job, because you want to make sure you use keywords, because that's those, the companies use rhythms to pick up what keywords are being used. And then your portfolio, you want to make sure that you tailor it just slightly for the company or the cover letter. I mean, it's crazy that we have to have a job and then look for a job at the same time. I did it differently, where I just quit my job and then figured out the economy is great and the market is fantastic. And when I want to find another job, I'll do it on my terms and take the time to do all those things, because it's a lot. It absolutely is. Again, I've been in this for a little bit longer and I'm fortunate enough that I can do that, but it's hard when you're, starting off and, you're trying to, I had 3 design jobs when I first started out of college, because I was just trying to get into the industry. But knowing that it's definitely a lot of work and it's competitive. There's a lot of great talent out there. So
yeah. Mary has a
Be
question.
patient.
I don't want to forget Mary. Real quick.
You're good.
Poor Mary.
It's okay. Hi, so I'm new to like the UX design space, and like I'm currently in like the Google course, and I'm like currently like on the topic of identifying like different types of bias. So I have 2 questions for you guys. How would you separate your feelings and emotions from difficult decisions, and how would you overcome sunk cost fallacy and other biases with your design?
What was the first part of that question again?
I actually put in the chat, I said, how do you separate your feelings and emotions from like difficult decisions that you would have to make with your design?
Well, I think one part of that is if you're fortunate enough to work at a company where you have a UX researcher, you have a lot of great information at your fingertips. Unfortunately, not every company has that, but going in and looking at, survey results or any kind of data that you can is going to help you make the decision that's best for the customer, knowing that, our biases always come into play. I don't think we can avoid it 100%. It would be great if we could. At the past couple of companies I've been at, advocating for accessibility for people with hearing and sight disabilities is something that I've tried to make sure I do, because it is the right thing to do. But knowing that, it's complicated, and finding someone who can advocate for someone who is different than yourself is important in a company. It's absolutely something that we all need to work at. So
I think there's two things. One, if something is something you're really passionate about and you feel a certain way, sometimes it's good to like let those feelings or emotions out somewhere, like whether you write it down, how you feel you're working through the project or the process, to get it out of your system. Because sometimes it's just about getting it out of your system. Two, I think, you know, piggybacking on what Stacy was saying, find people that you're trying to solve the problem for and ask their thoughts, like anyone. This is also why like a lot of UX design in its early days, and people still do this now, and part of the process that we kind of missed out in our grad program because it was through COVID, was go in and visibly watch people do things like with stuff. If you're designing a solution where you can easily access multiple people that are not you experiencing that product, observe, sponge it up, see how people are using that thing. If you are, you know, the more you can get access to people who experience those things a certain way that you're solving for, it helps pull a little bit of your bias out. But there's no way you can eliminate it in totality. But the more that you find people that are those people, those are your users or potential users that you can try and understand better.
I think awareness is the first step in all that, just being aware. Because we all have biases. I mean, we have more than just the ones that you brought up. We have the, you know, all sorts of cognitive biases. That's just being human. So learning about them and being aware of them. I know that early on in my career, I really struggled with feedback. And I think it was because I was very isolated and just trying to do things on my own and making assumptions that everybody would hate what I was doing. And I think surrounding yourself with a community of people, whether they are other UX designers or people in your company, I think that's a huge step forward in giving yourself a growth mindset, of being curious, opening up, tell me more, how can I learn? If you're always trying to learn and grow and do better, that's a great way to guard yourself against the biases that are natural in all of us.
And one small thing I was going to say really quick is be patient with yourself. All of this stuff is hard. It's not easy. And it's sometimes you're going to have to, when you're doing a role like this, unlike other jobs, it can take a toll depending on the project. And it's okay to every once in a while say, I need a break. I need to like go lay down in a field and stare at some clouds for a couple hours. That's okay. Like, because we are all moving way too fast than what we should be doing. You know, sitting way too long. I don't think I've stood like enough today. Like, so we need to be, you know, patient with who we are and what we're doing, because like all of this work is hard, and kudos to like going through this process for everybody here.
Yeah, that's like kind of like one of the things that I would like struggle with is like patience is definitely like one of them, and like trying to learn like just learning in general, and just like not everything is just going to be like super quick. I just need to like take some time and just learn.
Yeah, 100%. You got it absolutely right.
We are straight. Sorry about the dog. We are straight up at 8 o'clock. And I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I know that we did not get to all of your questions, particularly those around just interviewing and portfolios. We are going to talk a lot about that in our next meetup, or we can continue the conversation on Slack. For those of you that are asking about the recording, I will be posting the recording on, we have each one of the events, we have past events, and we try to put the recording there. So I will get that up in the next few days. I probably will not be emailing people that unless maybe Brianna, I'll give her the link, she can send that out.
Yeah, I'll be sending it up with a follow-up email, Cindy.
Awesome, thank you, Brianna. Please take the survey that Brianna dropped into the chat. So we always want to learn and do better. So we appreciate you filling out that survey. Please join our Slack channel. Please, we have volunteer opportunities for UX and ATX. And I know that, please, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I definitely make myself available for mentoring. So if you have specific questions or want to do a portfolio review, I'm happy to do that. I don't want to speak for our guests and assume that they want to do the same thing, but I'm sure that you could reach out to them on LinkedIn. Is that okay? Can they reach out to you guys on LinkedIn?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Can we give a huge round of applause for Kristen, Unji, and Stacy? Thank you so much, particularly Unji and Stacy for jumping in today at the last minute. It turned out to be a fantastic discussion. So appreciative. Really, really glad you're here. Thank you guys. I will see you guys next month at our next meetup. I really appreciate it. Have a great night. I'll stay around to answer any questions as we wrap up.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, guys.
See you later.
Thanks, Cindy. Have a good night.
Bye, Brianna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any final questions for me before I close things out?
Oh, I had one last question.
Sure.
What are kind of your, maybe you talked about a little bit, but what are kind of the things that stand out for you and really are frustrating when you're viewing portfolios and you think, oh, I wish they would have just done this or done that?
Ooh, that's
like
a good
you
question.
said, individuality was.
Well, I don't get frustrated by that. I think it just helped me remember them, though. I think the things that frustrate me, honestly, with a portfolio is when people, the way that people present it. There was a question in the chat, and I didn't get a chance to answer it. And my opinion is that a separate deck for presenting in an interview is actually really valuable. It's tailored. When we did interviews, we had a case study presentation as part of it. And the folks that had tailored and had a deck definitely stood out in my mind and really impressed me because they were prepared. Because a presentation is not the same as scrolling down a website and going through things. It's very different. So I can't say that the person that ended up getting the job had a presentation, but it definitely stood out for me. My other thing is like finding spelling errors, like that people should not have spelling errors on their portfolio. The ones that do, I tend to avoid just because it tells me that they're not detail oriented, and how am I going to trust them with client work? So those are the main things. I'm pretty open to seeing what personalities come through. Sometimes it's not to my taste, but I still like to see what they have to offer. So that's valuable for me.
Okay, thank you for that. And definitely I will try and reach out to you and see if if you have the time we can do a portfolio review. That's okay.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, thank you. That'll be great. And thank you so much for this session tonight.
You bet. Are there any other questions?
Hi, Cindy. I did. I had a quick question. So I starting off, I just want to say thank you again so much for holding these things. This is my third time coming to your events, and so much has been learned from those experiences, and so much more questions have been pondering through my mind. And just starting off in the career, I guess late in my time, as I'm 33, but I'm not saying I'm old. I think I'm rambling now, but anyway, I think what I'm okay, I'll just say that I would love to talk to you more about sort of this career, if that's okay. And I'm trying to think, probably see if I can do that through LinkedIn. I don't really have a like a full-blown portfolio currently because I'm a student doing a UX design program. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Micah.
Hmm?
Yeah.
I went to Micah.
And oh, you did? Oh my
Yeah, I
gosh.
got my
Okay.
graduate degree from there.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Wow. What a
That's how Kristen and I
um,
met. Kristen was in my cohort. So
oh, okay. Oh, wow, that's so great. I so so they do have a UX design program that I'm currently in, but I just feel like it's just way too fast, and it's like I want to take a breath and then learn it and soak it all in, and there's just no time for that. And so I think, just having to talk to UX designers like yourself and other people as well is really helpful, and kind of does give me more hope that it isn't as uh, hurry up and learn kind of thing, as opposed to this is actually very interesting and I really want to keep chewing on it. Anyway, so I just want to introduce myself a little bit, so I'm not like some weirdo on the internet, random person. But yeah, so I'll just get in contact with you. I don't want to waste your time, or not waste your time, but I know you probably have things to do as well. So yeah, I'll just get in contact with you sometime if that's okay.
yeah, that sounds great. Connect with me.
Awesome. Okay, well, have a good night. I don't have any other questions, but just to say thank you so much again.
You're welcome.
These meetings are awesome, and I'll
Aw-
always join all of them.
Awesome. I'm glad you're here. Have a
Yay.
great night.
Okay.
Dilpreet?
Hi, Cindy. I have a quick question. First of all, thank you for this event. It was very insightful. It's my first time and I'll be tuning in again to the
Good.
next event. Yeah, so my question is, first of all, a little bit about myself. I just completed my UX design bootcamp.
Uh-huh.
And
Congrats.
thank you. I keep hearing when I'm, looking for career advice, I keep hearing that you should have a specific industry in mind. And I know that, and I know a little bit about what specific interests me, but I haven't had enough experience as a designer in the real world out there to finalize something like that. And I know it's not finalizing as such, but just even, putting it out on my portfolio or my resume, I think it's a big deal. But do you have any advice on how like a beginner like me should go about choosing a specific industry for themselves without having adequate experience?
Can I share with you something? I think
Yeah,
that
of
that
course.
advice is bullshit. I really do.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't think you could possibly make that decision without trying things out. And in fact, I'm reading a book right now about the importance of trying lots of things before you really settle in. So I
True.
think that your question about like, oh, that doesn't feel right. I think that that's fine. I think what you want to
Yeah.
do is what I typically tell junior designers is, instead of like settling on an industry, because then there becomes this sunk cost fallacy right there, because you get into it and then maybe you decide that you don't want to do it, but you've invested all this time in it. Instead, if you're just not sure, why don't you make a list of companies that you think are interesting? Might be
Okay.
fun to work at, okay?
True.
Then look at your LinkedIn, okay? You have all those connections, I'm sure, and see who they're connected to. Okay, so because every single one of your connections has connections, right?
Right.
And then see who of their connections works at the companies that you identified. And then you go to the person that you're connected to and you say, will you introduce me to so-and-so? I want to find out what it's like to work there. You're not asking for a
Gotcha.
job. You're just,
Yeah.
you're on an information gathering. That will tell you a lot. And then will start to help you narrow down where you want to go first or second. I tend to ask people, like, where do you want to start? And I don't do it by industry as much as by the type, I don't even know how to define it, but it's startup, versus agency versus like
Yeah.
in-house or enterprise.
Right.
Those three are very different worlds, and
Yeah.
you can switch industries, you know,
Right.
no matter what. But
Yeah.
you know,
And
just
I see what your point is there, because if I choose between those, like, couple levels there, like that's the type of organization I would like to work for. My ideal scenario as a junior UX designer would be that I get to work for an organization where I can work on a variety of projects. So I know where I'm headed after that. So I know what's interesting and what specific industry is interesting me, and then I can continue to grow in that specific regard. So that's my ideal scenario, but obviously it may or may not happen. But I completely understand what you're saying, and I'm gonna take up on that LinkedIn advice, and I'm gonna reach out to more connections. So that is definitely an action item. Another quick question I had, and this is really quick. So when you're reviewing somebody's portfolio, do you, in the back of your head, even if you're not wanting to judge them sort of on that, but do you judge on what platform they're hosting their case studies? You
no,
don't?
no, I don't.
Okay.
No, just because one, I've seen designers go down a rabbit hole and then not have a portfolio because they're so worried about where it is.
Mhm,
As long as it's functional and it looks good, I think it needs to look
mhm.
good. And so,
Okay.
like in the boot camp that I teach on the side,
Mhm.
they want them to like hand code their portfolio. And these designers don't have any kind
Right.
of coding ability. They have conversational
Mhm,
code. So I tell
mhm.
them, I don't care what platform it's on. And I've seen some really creative portfolios that maybe had like a hand-coded homepage that linked off to LinkedIn or Medium articles or
Mhm,
something like that for the case studies, or
mhm.
Wix, Squarespace, whatever it is. I don't even know it.
Mhm,
Webflow.
mhm.
It doesn't matter. It
Okay.
doesn't. As long as it looks good and it functions and it's responsive,
Mhm.
it does not matter the platform.
That's good to know. All right. Thank you so much for answering those questions. And I hope you have a great rest of your night. And thank you so much for this event.
Oh, you bet. I'm glad it resonated.
Thank you.
What about you, DeAndre? I see you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi. Yeah.
Cool.
You have a question?
Thank you for tonight. Is what the first thing I was gonna say. I know you just mentioned checking your connections for connections. Do you happen to know anyone who does UX design for retail employees?
UX design for retail employees. I don't know. I might have, there might be a company out there that does that, but I don't know anybody off the top of my head.
Okay, because that's something that I found myself drawn to. Was like because of course you have retail, but I feel like a lot of times it's centered towards the customer,
Mhm.
like Walmart.com. But then when you go for the Walmart employees, that it tends to fail for them. So that
Yeah,
was just something I was been interested in lately.
like intranet type stuff or
Yes,
employee
exactly.
resources. Yeah. Can I
Yeah.
tell you that Workday is an HR software that has the absolute worst user experience I've ever seen. It's
Okay.
awful. And
I can believe it.
big companies use it for their employees to manage their HR and stuff, and it's awful. I think I agree with you. I think employees get the short stick.
Yeah,
They really do.
sure.
So you could tackle it by looking at some of the organizations or companies that do intranet
Okay.
software. I don't know which ones other than Workday. Some places are using like Confluence, which is Atlassian. So that's another company to look at. But yeah, if you do a Google search looking for like employee relation management software, might give you some ideas.
All right. Thank you. And one more question.
Mhm.
So I've done a project for an employee mobile app. So and I know we're working on connecting. So would it be possible for me to present that to you or for you to review it? just so I know you talk about honing your interview skills.
Sure, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can also find me on ADP List. So I do mentor sessions through ADP List and also producthired.com. I'm a coach on there too.
Okay. Thank you. I'll unmute because I know other people probably have questions.
Does anybody else have a question? They might not, they might just be hanging out. If you have another question, DeAndre, you can totally ask.
Okay, cool. So I'm in another meetup. It's a UX and digital creatives meetup. And so with the project that I've worked on, they helped me hone basically make it more concise. Because it was like a long article that I made more concise, turned it into a presentation. It's made in Keynote, and I know you said the platform that you present on doesn't really matter. So now with COVID, are people presenting more on Zoom, or are people doing more in person?
No, a lot of interviews now are in Zoom because a
Okay.
lot of work is remote. now.
Okay. So then would the person just share their screen and then pull up their presentation and then okay.
Yep.
That's all one thing I was wondering.
Yeah, but even if you interview in person, what you
Uh-huh.
can do is you can bring your own computer. A lot of times they'll hook you into their system, where you can turn your laptop around and share it, or you can go old school and have like a backup, like printed PDF.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should always have a backup anyway, just in case
Okay.
something.
Like something
Technology
Google?
will always fail.
Okay. I was wondering about that too. I'm like, in this digital age, would that make like, I don't know, would it uh, be of interest to the employer that you have a physical version?
I would keep it on hand just in case something fails, because they'll want it emailed to them, but you'll want to bring an extra copy of your resume anyway.
Okay.
In terms of like presenting, I would just make sure that if you go to their location, you've practiced. Don't try to do it with a computer you're not familiar with or anything like that. Just be ready for any scenario, because oftentimes something happens and you're still going to have to present. So make sure, so by that I mean, like, what if the internet doesn't work? Make sure you
Yeah.
have downloaded a copy so you don't have to have the internet. So like, because some people will depend on Google Slides, but then if they're offline, they can't bring up, and then they scramble and then they start to get nervous and then things go downhill from there.
Okay. That's definitely good advice to write down.
Anything else?
Oh yes. UX is degree a requirement?
Is a UX degree is not a requirement. And it depends on the company on whether a degree at all is a requirement.
Okay.
Some companies want to see a degree, at least maybe even in a related field or just a degree in general. And some
Okay.
places won't care. So it really depends. So you want to look at the job description and see what they're requiring.
Okay. So
Because
would it
some
be
of them will say equivalent. So,
so would it be a bad idea to apply to jobs that are say they require a degree?
well, I mean, it won't hurt. I mean, they'll just don't be surprised if they don't call you. But
Yeah.
if you have great experience and, they might call you anyway, So
Yes.
don't let that hold you back.
Okay.
So I'm
For
guessing you don't have a degree.
No, personally, I do not.
Okay. Do you have like a boot camp certificate or anything like that?
Not for UX. I have one for like introductory web design.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So as much as you can like rack up like any kind of learning, that helps. It doesn't have to be like a paid program. You could do, I mean, the Google UX certification is pretty reasonable. I mean, it's like $32 a month. And if most people finish it in 6 months. That's not bad. That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, that's not
You know.
bad.
And then you could do all the LinkedIn learning. I mean, that's all. If you have access to a LinkedIn premium account, LinkedIn Learning is such a great resource. And then there's actually, what is it? Learners. I don't know the website, but it's Learners, and it's all UX, all free or most of it free. Videos, video learning. It's a
Okay.
really good resource.
I haven't heard about that one before.
Yeah, I hadn't either. One of my co-organizers found out about it and then got us into their conference that they had a few weeks ago. So we did like a little panel discussion, but it was a really cool platform.
Okay. I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah.
And I think that's all my questions.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Going once. Going twice. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting then. It was so nice to meet you all. And I'll see you on Slack and at the next meetup. All right. See you guys.